Welcome to Chatsunami. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Chatsunami. My name's Satsunami, and joining me for a very special 10k episode is none other than the one and only person who started it all with me. It is Craigy C.
Hello there.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm not bad. In case anyone's wondering, usually we record these episodes together in person, but last time I was over, Satsu said that I wasn't allowed to keep taking my shirt off, so I stayed at home this time.
So instead I'm doing it in solidarity. Yes.
Neither of us are wearing a shirt for this podcast.
Yeah, just the muscles. If Chatsunami doesn't pan out, we're going to do one of those really horrible off-brand podcasts. So it's like, do you want to be a medley band today? Take your shirt off, step 1. Step 2, I don't know, nobody's listened this far.
Step 2, make sure you've actually got a camera set up because we're both audio only.
Step 3, turn the radiator on even. Well, the radio and the radiator. You're going to hide it from your neighbours. Or maybe that'll condition them to go, oh, the radio's on, they must have his shirt off. Anyway.
Pavlov shit.
What would you even call that? I don't know. But anyway, the podcast we're working on today is Chatsunami. But yeah, today we are going to be going back to, quite frankly, a nostalgic topic because you and I both started at least the very first episode of Chatsunami live on Twitch, and we ended up talking about a very mutual interest of ours, that of course being Dungeons and Dragons, which, my god, can you believe it's been nearly 3 years as of this episode?
Honestly, no. It's crazy to, Facebook and Google photos and all that gives you memories of, 3 years ago, and it's like, oh, that was those times. That was 3 years ago, that was then. But no, it's been amazing to see the podcast and go from from being something on Twitch to what it is now. So no, it's felt like a long time but a short time at the same time.
It really has, because I have to admit, one of the tactics that I use to promote the podcast is if there's any anniversaries for a particular game or a movie or something, then I'll be like, oh, here's an episode we did on that. But do you know how frustrating it is to have an interest to be like, oh, something on Star Wars, and then I go to promote the podcast and I'm like, I haven't talked about that at all. Son of a... So it's just oh, and you do realise that although we have talked a lot about certain topics, there's also so many that we haven't touched on.
So many things to talk about in the future.
Yeah, like Minions 2, Return of the Memes. Yeah.
I actually watched that on a flight. I don't think we've got time for this review, but
yes, we'll go for it. Speedrun review.
Not great. And I quite like the first Minions movie. I actually quite like children's animation because it's everyone that pretends to like anime. Really, it's the same thing. So I quite like children's shows. And yeah, Minions 2, not great. If you want to hear the full review, I'll put it on your Patreon. Not kidding.
No, you can blue balls the fans like that. Give them what they want. A 3-minute review. Not good. Not good. Jesus, not good. It stinks. It stings. Yes, Craigy C, everything stinks. Moving that off of Minions because, that's next week's episode. But yeah, today we are, of course, going to be talking about the topic that started it all, that, of course, being Dungeons and Dragons, which I have to admit, the audio quality of this one's going to be better. The editing's going to be better. So please listen to this one. Don't listen to the first episode. Or do, if you're morbidly curious. But would you believe, though, it was even further back that you and I started, or maybe you before me, right enough, but you and I started playing this game.
Yeah, I actually have, quick wee story, I actually went back and I was made a Facebook event recently, which is the first time I've done that in a long time, and I had a look, and it lets you look at your history of Facebook events. I was like, oh my god, we started playing D&D in what I believe was 2017?
Oh my god, really?
I believe so.
Jesus, that is a long time ago.
Wait, it actually might be earlier. No, I want to say 2017. No, I was wrong. 2015.
Oh my god. 8 years ago.
Yep.
Jesus, 8 years ago. I would say where has the time gone, but I'm going to go into a slight depression, so I'm going to move on. Yeah, because I always remember at the time I had moved away from home to go to university, and I used to meet up with, of course, yourself and a mutual friend. And I always remember you and this mutual friend turned around and said, "Oh, do you want to play Dungeons and Dragons?" And I'm not going to lie, I was very confused when you said that, because I thought you were genuinely joking about it, like saying, "Oh, let's play Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, roll dice, woo, nerd culture." And I was like, the hell is Dungeons and Dragons? Before I go on, because obviously spoilers, I did get into it and I loved it, but what was it that inspired you to get into it?
Kind of the same story. So clarity is always something I really want to quickly bring up. So I started playing it in 2014 then, and you started playing it in 2015. One thing that I think is worth noting is there wasn't, like there is now, the publicity behind Dungeons & Dragons. This is pre-Stranger Things, this is pre-Critical Role. The only sort of major one I can think of was like Acquisitions Incorporated was on YouTube. But, a lot of these major Dungeons & Dragons things that we think of now, there was an original Dungeons & Dragons film that had nothing to do with Dungeons & Dragons. There wasn't much of it in pop culture. And I had really the same reaction as you. I lived away from home down in the south of England for a while and didn't have many friends down there. It's tough making friends as an adult. And when I made friends with this guy, and he was like, "Oh, you should come into mine and play Dungeons and Dragons." I was like, it doesn't really sound like me, if I'm honest. That doesn't really sound like my cup of tea. And but I was like, I'll do it. Make some friends, have a good time. And it turned out it was absolutely incredible. Genuinely, like a life-altering moment was playing Dungeons and Dragons for me. It basically like gave me a whole new way of interacting with my friends, I think. So yeah, as soon as I came back to Scotland, as I moved back up, I was like, I need to introduce this to everyone that I know, get as many people playing this as possible, because it's special. It's unlike anything else out there. Like I truly believe it's an incredible and very special form of entertainment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would go as far to say that D&D was probably the glue that held our social circle together at times, because the amount of times that we met at your place and, we played Dungeons and Dragons all the way from, God, I can't believe I'm saying this, 2015 to, I think, was it 2018 or 19 that it finished?
2019, because I got married the month before the final game.
Wow. Of course, yeah. Oh, that is crazy to think, though. Yeah, I always remember at the beginning being quite nervous, because especially with D&D, and I'm going to put my cards on the table here, going back to something you were saying there about how it wasn't as popularised with like Stranger Things and Critical Role. It seriously wasn't. It was very much a case of, oh, Dungeons and Dragons is still quite a nerdy thing. And then as soon as I got into it with like you guys and everything, it was absolutely fantastic. And don't get me wrong, I was quite nervous in the first game. Like, I would let everyone else make decisions, and if it came to me, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to roll the dice and whatever." Yeah, can you tell I play D&D? It's like, I roll the dice and then slay the Jabberwocky, etc. No, jokes aside, and this is a controversial part, but I played as a gnome bard, and the reason was because I had a halfling Lord of the Rings online character called Blimbro, and I went, "Oh, okay, I'll name my character Blimbro," but I forgot halflings were a thing, so I decided to go for gnomes, which, see, to be honest, gnomes are cooler. They're steampunk hobbits, as I think you'd describe them.
That was my description of them.
I mean, fantastic description, to be fair, but yeah, they're absolutely a lot of fun to play as, and yeah, ever since that moment, I absolutely loved it. But out of curiosity, see when you said, "Oh, I'm going to come back up, I'm going to introduce it to my friends," were you quite nervous that it wasn't going to catch on?
Yeah, I must have been to some degree, but I think it's one of those things, if it doesn't catch on, it doesn't catch on, and no one ever, it becomes, I remember that time Craig tried that weird thing. I'm the same guy that also tried to get all my friends to bet on the Marble Olympics, so I'm not...
I forgot about that. Oh, yeah.
I am not abject to failure. I don't know what the term to look for here. I'm not a stranger to failure. I knew someone would at least bite on it, because it is quite funny, and I don't know if you had this moment, but I had a moment when I was playing it the very first time, and we were doing this battle sequence, and I was playing as this big half orc. I think he's called Urk or Oof or something. And as part of that, I got him to pick up a dead kobold, a wee dragon thing, and throw it at one of his pals to try to scare them off, and it worked. And I was like, that is impossible to do in a video game. That sequence of events can't be done. That changing the plan, changing the sequence. And I think that's what really caught my attention, was like, oh no, this game is actually reactive to what I do. And I knew you and a few other friends who are like into the sort of video games, but also into that that problem solving element of it would kind of like that. And like I said, if it didn't work out, then that would have been life. But but no, that was kind of my thing. Is like I knew someone would bite because it's very unique, Dungeons and Dragons.
Because it definitely shows you, especially if you're in a friend group who are playing it, and you get to see who kind of pairs off, if that makes sense, and starts doing their own thing. Because I have to admit, Adam and I, my co-host, of course, in Chatsunami, we ended up pairing off, and he played, I think, was it a ranger? Or a human ranger?
Human ranger.
Yeah, we ended up coming up with some really, crazy schemes, like interior decorating businesses. One of the other ones, my favourite one to this day, is Adam and I, for some reason, we had to, deliver some parcel to... we had to deliver a parcel to, I don't know, someone across the other side of the city, but we didn't realise ours was the decoy. So we were very much under the impression that, we are going to deliver the real thing. And we got people killed over it. There were peasants driving the thing and we were jumping off and just seeing them explode. And we saw, the very level-headed, because is it safe to say that bar maybe one or two of them, the rest of the party was relatively level-headed?
It was definitely a mix, and I think my favourite was my wife. She would have this exasperated look on her face most of the time because she just wanted to play the damn game. She liked rolling the dice and casting the spells, and the mechanics part of the game. And you two would be prattling on about interior decorating and what would it be like to open a brewery and this and all this stuff, and she's just can we not just for once complete a mission?
Going back to your point, though, that is the beauty of this game. The fact that you can play it however you want. You can either play it very straight to the rulebook, with the mechanics and everything, you win, you lose, or if you want the roleplay element, which I have to say the roleplay element is, oh my god, it's my favourite part of the game, because I was, of course, the bard of the group. I wasn't strong. For some reason, I would nether region punch people, but I wouldn't, I'd be more of a talker than a fighter. I would say lover, but considering what my character got up to, that was not on the table. In fact, I actually, in a slight tangent, but I always remember I was horrified to read the memes about bards. I went on and I was like, I wonder what people say about bards online, and it's all this, thing about bards are smutty and they sleep around and things. I was like, wait, what? They do what? And I'm here saying, I'm going to open up an interior decorating here, these walls have to go. Adam's in the background going, yeah, these have to go. Things like that. I'm like, where did I miss a step? And I ended up getting people taken to the Shadow Realm, to put it nicely. Yeah, it was absolutely crazy, but those were the memorable experiences,
One of my favourite ones, I was the Dungeon Master, so the person that sort of writes the game. What I would do a lot of times, especially once you guys got more comfortable playing it, is I would just come up with a scenario and not write anymore. So I would literally have a note on my page that would say something like, I don't know, oak blocking the path, and I had no clue what would happen next, and you guys would spin on it. And my favourite one I ever did was guys were out travelling and came across a tavern in the middle of nowhere. I think you were being chased. That was it.
Is this by the dragon?
Yeah, you were being chased by a dragon. I want to talk about this because it's
I know, but I'm going to get cancelled for this.
My one note, I had a single note in my book, and it was, Elf wants an arm wrestle. That was the only thing in my entire note. But then Blimbro went up and I thought, so much funnier if the elf's a mage. So I was like, we'll do a magic contest. I think we did a mage hand arm wrestle.
Yeah.
So you won one, he won one, and then he put a bet on. He bet, I can't remember what he bet now, something I had to make up on the spot. And you bet that Adam's pet alligator, who was basically by this point the team mascot. He was an important part of the team.
I didn't even tell him, by the way.
And you lost. I know I didn't want to take the alligator at the party either because, like I said, he's the team mascot, but I didn't really know how else we were going to do this until you basically took the guy outside, locked him outside, and had him be eaten by a dragon. That all came from a single piece of, a single sentence I wrote down on a piece of paper about 10 minutes before the session.
I don't know what's worse, that or the fact that I had to bury the body the next morning and take his flute. So, of course, the rest of the party's saying, Blimbro, where did you get that wonderful blood-soaked flute? And I'm like, I don't want to talk. I just want my fry up. I want to go. And of course, yeah, I mean, not me personally, because I feel as if there was a lot of chaotic elements in the party. But I feel as if I didn't help. That's what I'm saying. Especially with a particular NPC that you introduced to the party who was meant to be one of the guides and one of the friendlier characters. And I always remember in the first session, I thought it would be funny. So it was a fellow gnome called Etsy. And I thought it would be funny to be like, oh, Etsy's a dick. Ha ha ha. Etsy's not cool. Oh, screw you, Etsy, and things. And that snowballed. See, from that tiny sentence into this antagonistic relationship, so much so that I was having like Goku versus Vegeta fights against them. But the rest of the party, you know, they're fighting the big bads, they're like escalating the plot and everything, moving it along, and I'm fist fighting with another gnome.
That was what struck me so much about Dungeons and Dragons, and I think being the dungeon master, being the other side of that, like that was what's so fascinating. So again, with the Etsy, I had this idea he would be the guide, and then he would open up the world, and he would sort of be that guiding character that just explains everything. And as soon as you guys took a disliking to him, I was like, okay, he's Team Rocket. That's what we'll do with him. He will come back, because we split it into like seasons. So it was like 3 seasons, and then we had breaks in the seasons. So it was like he would come back for every, I think 6 or 7 times he came back to fight you guys. And like escalation, like he died and came back, and he died and came back. We had him die off screen, came back. I think he actually eventually obviously turned good at the end a wee bit, but that was he's probably my favourite character I ever came up with, just because of that whole, you can't predict what the party's going to do when you're writing this. And that's what's so amazing about being a dungeon master, is you write this stuff in your head like, oh, this is totally going to pan out the way I see it panning out, and it never ever does. And again, there's nothing else like Dungeons and Dragons, because if you were to write something, I don't know, like a book, you know how it's going to end. I don't know how, if I write something, I usually know how it ends.
I mean, that is true. There's a lot of improv that goes on with Dungeons and Dragons, and don't get me wrong, you can technically play it by the book, because I have to say, I ran like a very short-lived session as a DM with you guys, and it's amazing how when I did it, I made the choice of, oh, I'm going to make up my own world, make up my own story, you know, use the rules though from the book. But I was actually surprised when I opened up the book and I'm like, wait, there's a story in here? There's guidelines? And you know, you look up other people's campaigns, it's like, oh, I don't know, Balrog's like Lord of the Rings, but like, oh, the Balrog of up the road, he's coming to get you. And I'm like, there's a Balrog from up the road? What the hell? Oh, it was quite shocking. But again, going back to what you were saying, that is just the beauty of this game, that you're able to, just improvise and create your own story, and by extension, create your own memories. Because again, I don't want to get too sappy or anything, but I do feel as if it did bring us a wee bit closer together as friends overall. You know, you, me, everybody else in the group.
Oh, 100%. I mean, so much so that I believe at my wedding, we had a table named after the first island that you guys started on. We had like Lego figures on it from D&D and stuff like that. It's had a huge influence in my life as well. I think, the friendship side, but also I think personality and confidence-wise. I think even, for example, this podcast, I didn't used to be anyway. I didn't used to be a very good talker. I used to go to like speech therapy and stuff like that. This was years and years back now. And Dungeons and Dragons, part of that was getting to improv. You mentioned improv, but getting that quick wit, being able to talk. I still can't do accents. But I think that side of it, the life skills that Dungeons and Dragons gives you, I think is like something that doesn't get spoken about very often, but it's also an incredible part of it.
Oh no, I totally agree with you, because you'll be able to attest to this as well, when you might not be able to hear it now, but maybe at the beginning of the podcast you might have heard it, but I'm not a confident person in real life, to be honest. I absolutely struggled with, unless it's someone I knew really well, I struggled with talking to people, opening up and things, and especially with something like D&D, even though I knew everybody, I was quite nervous. I thought, oh, what if I say something and, oh, it's stupid, or, people are going to laugh at it. But the more and more you actually get into it, the more you do get, as you said, confidence, and you do start interacting with people, you start working together. It's great for team building and things. And I know that sounds weird and very, hokey to be like, oh, it changed my life, but genuinely, it did help quite a bit to be able to contribute to, even if it's like a fake save the world storyline, but, it helps you work towards like a a kind of common goal and everything. And it does let you establish those memories, which I have to say, and I don't know if you've ever had any personal bad D&D experiences, but I was absolutely shocked. See, after we started playing and I was looking up online going, oh, I can't wait to see what everyone else's campaigns are like. And yeah, there's a lot of horror stories, which I was not expecting, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's like any hobby, isn't it? I think a lot of it comes down to the dungeon master and their personality. Not to blow my own trumpet, but the way we played was very much freeform, and I knew we'd kind of like that because none of us are like sticklers for like war games or like, you know, super into rules and stuff. Maybe you are actually. I know you like Warhammer, but you know what I mean? Like, we're not.
Thanks for outing me. I was keeping my mouth shut.
But you know what I mean? We're not all sitting there
yeah.
with like rulers and stuff. And there's people that love that stuff. There's people that love like war simulators and whatever. More power to them. But I think with Dungeons and Dragons, when you get like a dungeon master, they can choose how the game operates. And so, like I said, I kind of based mine very much on what I think you guys would like, which was a fairly serious world that you guys got to cut loose in. The rules were pretty. I'll make them up as I go along. They're kind of based on fact, but you know, I just avoided some things like inventory management. People do things like you have to roll to collect arrows when you fire arrows for ammunition, stuff like that. There's like crazy rules that you can go into like so deep, and a lot of people do that. I think, yeah, there's definitely different ways a dungeon master can play a game, and I think that makes a big effect. And then obviously, again, the players have a big impact on what a game's like, and we were quite fortunate, I think, in that we all knew each other really well, and if there was something going on at the table we didn't like, we would just talk about it, you know, or something, you know. It's not like, and we had players come and go over the years, and you know, it's not like we were stuck with each other. And I think when you read a lot of the horror stories online, a lot of time it tends to be, I attended a Comic-Con, or I attended a games workshop, or I attended whatever, and I'm forced to play with 4 other players I don't know. And I think that's typically when the games don't go to, or the kind of stuff you read online, that's when they kind of don't go to plan.
I mean, I would 100% agree with that. I had an experience which I won't go into too much detail because and again, not to blow my trumpet for the podcast, but I've got like a Chatsu Shorts episode on this particular topic. But long story short, I'd got invited to one of these comic shop places, and they had said, oh, it's a starter night. And yeah, that was exactly the same thing. I was put with these complete strangers in the middle of a campaign and everything, and it wasn't a great experience, to be fair. I probably didn't go into it with the right mentality, but at the same time, you know, it's kind of battling against these strangers who clearly didn't want anything to do with us, and we were kind of forced there. It's like, you know, you see on programs and it's the kid who is an outcast, and they're like, oh, go into this group, you know, you'll make friends. And then this group turns around and they're like, no, we don't want you in our group. If you ever show your face here again, we will throw you to the curb. And it's like, oh my god, okay. So yeah, that wasn't great, but I totally agree, because there wasn't so much a personal relationship there. The people around the table, I wasn't friends with them. My friend who was with me, he wasn't friends with them. So we had a very negative experience, and I said that to you, and not to praise you just because you're on, but the fact is that if it wasn't for that core experience with you, then I don't know how much I would have enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons going forward. And I feel as if that's a thing that not a lot of people talk about. They say, oh, I want to be like Critical Role, I want to be like all of these, insert any popular D&D show in here, oh, I want to be like this, but they kind of fail to realise that, again, that sounds terrible, oh, you need friends, but you know what I mean, it's like, you need, like, I mean, you can build that personal connection as you go along, but do you know what I mean? It's like, you can't just jump in with random strangers in the middle of it and expect it to go well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things you hear a lot about is the concept of a session zero. Effectively, I think that's kind of what we did, and I think it's what most teams tend to do, and it's like you have a session where you build up your character sheets and you play a wee game, and then the DM will go, oh, by the way, if there's anything you don't want, let me know. And then we did like a session zero sheet, but we actually did that like halfway through the game, so I hadn't discovered it by that point, but and it was just like laying out what I kind of basically just lays out what the Dungeon Master's planning on doing. So it's things like the tone and how graphic's going to get, whatever. And I pretty much said, we're doing Indiana Jones. Nowadays, I'd probably just say the MCU, but Indiana Jones was the example I used. Or Star Wars, it's like, yeah, the protagonists are in peril. You guys are going to get some terrible times, but ultimately, you're probably going to win. It's going to be some funny moments along the way. You know, there's going to be risks and tragedy and stuff, but we're ultimately going to win. And I think that's probably what what goes wrong a lot of the time, with certainly with Dungeon Masters, is they go in, you go in and you're expecting Star Wars and you get Star Trek, I guess, maybe, or like you get Saving Private Ryan instead. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways the game works, which is kind of the best thing and the worst thing about it, I guess.
I mean, that is the double-edged sword of Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, you know that comic that you and I love to reference all the time when we talk about D&D?
Yes.
And it's like this clown character who's like, oh, I'm so-and-so, the friendly clown, honk honk, and they're all like, haha, very funny. That's from the first session, and then it cuts to like the last session, and it's a clown in a very dramatic situation being like, I won't leave you behind, you have to leave me, Bombsall the clown, and he's like shedding a tear, and it's like, that is exactly what we went through, because I went, especially for my character in particular, but I went from the comical, goofy bard gnome to fighting a guy who wanted to become a god with nothing but a lute. And I was like, oh my god. And, all the other characters obviously developed alongside us. But yeah, it's just an absolutely... And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it is a fantastic experience. Just so long as... I think at the beginning, would you agree with this, that you should maybe temper your expectations to begin with?
Oh, 100%. As I was saying, I don't do accents. I still can't do accents. But I think, see the amount of people that are on like Reddit or whatever, like, my DM, they're alright, but they're not as good as I was expecting. No, my players aren't. And it's like, it's because you're watching Critical Role, or you're watching other people play, and you get this really high expectation. What was really good about you guys is you had no expectation. You know how when you drive with someone who can't drive, as in you're the driver and they're the passenger, and you do something, or you come out the roundabout a bit funny or whatever, and you go, oh man, that was a bit tight, and they go, alright, never noticed it. You know what I mean? Like that. If someone's a driver, they go, oh yeah. I think that plays a big part in Dungeons and Dragons, is like people expectations. So if you guys had absolutely no clue what was happening, if I'd gone in and played the worst game of all time, you guys would not have known any better.
I mean, as someone who runs a podcast and continually moans about the world of podcasting, and you guys are just like, all right, cool. Yeah. That was a good episode. And I'm like, oh, you don't understand the audio imbalance and this and that. And you're like, yeah, cool. Yeah, good points. Yeah. Oh my God. No, I totally agree with you there. It is that insider perspective, though. But speaking of Critical Role and, all these other shows and things, because I don't want to just narrow in on Critical Role, because I'm looking at the Red Panda lawyer in the background and he's shaking his head going, they've got Critical Role money, don't do it. But do you think, compared to when we started it, because you've got a good point there, that because it wasn't as popular, like obviously D&D's always been popular to a degree, but not as mainstream is maybe the correct word, but do you feel as if it's a good thing that Critical Role and things like that are promoting it, or do you think there's caveats to that success?
I think you're always going to get like a couple of things, but I think overall, we're talking about a few things going wrong, but we're talking about thousands of extra people playing it. We're talking about people being able to make money from it that, didn't happen for a long time. Certainly, we picked it up on Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 is the version that we played, and that was practically all online, legally all online. People weren't getting paid for that, and it wasn't really until we moved to D5, and I think Wizards of the Coast get a lot more money out of it now, and I think the people who are actually the artists and the DMs and stuff, and I think there's always going to be people who play it and they're not playing it the same, and but that's up to them to find out, and I think more money in a hobby that I like can only be a good thing. At the end of the day, I want more people playing it, and I want more stupidity and more things going wrong.
I mean, I can't argue with that. Visibility can only be a good thing. I mean, it's like, for example, Henry Cavill, who, ironically enough, when you were talking about war games, he's also opened up about being a Warhammer 40k fan, which, I'm not going to lie, that was one of the biggest plot twists of that year when he announced it, because I was like, it sounds weird to say that, but when celebrities do say, oh, I'm into D&D, or oh, I'm into Warhammer, or whatever, and you look at them and initially you think, no, you're not. But then they start getting really in-depth about, like, the lore and everything, and you're like, oh my god, they're into this.
Vin Diesel's the one I always think of. Vin Diesel, when he was like, oh, I love Dungeons and Dragons. Everyone's like, do you really? And then he put up a picture of his, this was on like Facebook or MySpace or Bebo or something that was like that, and he put up a picture of his birthday cake, and it was like all the D&D 3.5 books all stacked in a big list. And I was like, oh wow, you are a massive nerd, Vin Diesel.
Yeah, the Chronicles of Riddick were not kind. It is actually amazing to see that, though. And again, it's not trying to put celebrities, on a higher pedestal to be like, oh my god, they're one of us, But it is cool to see that it is like so universal. And especially nowadays, like a lot of celebrities don't have to. This is one of the jokes that you and I reference from The Simpsons, where, when a celebrity says, oh, I like this particular thing, and then another celebrity says, I don't like this particular thing, and everyone boos the second celebrity. Is like, that person's never seen that particular thing in their life. Yeah, it's really interesting to see that nowadays it is so widely accepted. And it sounds weird to say that. Can you imagine about maybe 10, 15 years ago thinking D&D would be so accepted?
Like I said, if I'd thought about it 10 years ago, I wouldn't have accepted it. I was very sceptical going into it, never mind someone else. So yeah, it's really unbelievable that it is such a mainstream thing now. And the movie's coming out, or is out. I mean, it's day-to-day episode there. There's a movie, On Among Thieves. To see that's kind of crazy, because that's like, it has to be pretty mainstream now for Hollywood to invest, into a brand. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have dreamed D&D would have been a thing, because, like I said, I wouldn't have been in that camp. I would have been like, Dungeons and Dragons, what's that all about? Load of crap.
Because I mean, it's something that you referenced earlier when you said that there is a D&D film, but you and I have watched it. It's not good. I don't actually know what to add to that. It's just, it's not the best film. It's alright, but yeah, again, it's alright, and who knows, maybe this new film will be alright as well, or it'll be great or whatever. But that's actually one of the points I wanted to raise, actually, because you do hear a lot of people, and this maybe might be the folly of the film, by, not because of the way it's made or anything, but it's something you brought up years ago, and it's like when you hear someone else tell you about their campaign, but you've got no emotional investment in that campaign because you're not the one playing it. So you're kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's quite a funny thing, but I guess nowadays it's like, I think they're just it's gonna be basically like a Marvel movie, isn't it? And they're just sticking it in the D&D world. Like you were talking about is it the Forgotten Realms or Forbidden Realms, whatever the name of the actual Dungeons and Dragons official canon is. I think it's just gonna be like, an action movie in that world. It's forbidden or forgotten. It's one of the two nouns. There'll be someone sitting on the other side of this podcast and they're like, it's forbidden! With
that Breaking Bad gif of the Bryan Cranston behind the car window going, no, it's forbidden, it's forbidden. Knocking the door. Oh, whoops. Whoops. That's the beauty of this podcast. Sometimes we get things right, sometimes we forget things.
But here's what we're going to do, is real quick, I'm just going to say both, and then you just edit out the one that I said wrong. So it's definitely called the Forgotten Realms, Forbidden Realms. There we go. And now I'm right either way, so cheers for it, isn't that?
Yeah, no problem. Both are staying in. Oh, you should not give me the power to edit. That's all I'm saying. Like, to end the episode as a closing point, because this is indeed our, admittedly late 10k plays special. And of course, you and I are going back to the very beginning to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to us. Do you have any advice for any future or prospective D&D players?
First of all, hit me up, because I really want to play. So, give me a shout.
Good point.
Just be open to it. I think that's what we both kind of mentioned, that is we both went in with what's this going to be, what's going to happen. I think both from a player and a Dungeon Master perspective, just be open and go with the flow and see what happens, because Dungeons and Dragons is ridiculous. It's emotional. It opens maybe doors into yourself that maybe you don't want to share. You do it by accident. Part of the role playing, there's number crunch and the stacks. You're going to get an emotional investment to random characters the Dungeon Master made up by accident. There's going to be all sorts of shenanigans and memories you'll have for a lifetime. We still reminisce about it, and it brought our friend group close together. So just be open to the journey, because if you have half a good time that we did, then it's going to be brilliant.
No, I can only echo that. It is definitely a bonding experience. I think is the best way to put it, in all the right ways. And I completely agree about the emotional investment, because, and spoilers for our campaign, I suppose, if you ever post it on YouTube or anything, but yeah, I actually remember one particular moment where my character died, but because of some absolute fluke a couple of sessions previously.
No, a couple of years previous.
Oh, was it actually?
Yes!
Oh, you were sitting on that egg for a while. I ended up coming back to life, or my character, sorry, not me, I'm not Jesus. Back then, yeah, I was actually gutted. I'm not going to lie, I don't know if I've ever told you my feelings about that. But I genuinely, like, I felt as if, and it just is so weird because, again, this is a fictional character, you know, it's not going to affect my life whether they're there or not, kind of thing. But at the same time, I was just like, oh my god, Blumbrow's dead. And everything. And you feel as if, oh, you're gutted, you're winded, you're like, oh, is this the end? Am I going to have to roll for a new character? And obviously, when you pulled the twist out, I was like, you son of a. Oh, you. And then I have to admit, see, ever since then, because I was very cavalier about the way I played the game, I was like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But see, after that, and I don't know if you noticed, but I was very cautious after that.
But that also played into the story as well, because what happened to you in real life happened to the character, and it was so fun. And like, I just want to quickly mention something you mentioned about being devastated your characters getting killed off. It's like, what's so amazing for me about, we're talking about you can't write a book if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, and Blimbrow, your character, his story wasn't finished, and I always thought that was so fascinating. I kind of wish he had died in a way, because his story still had an arc left to go, and we got the arc in the end, and he got all the the big bow tied around everything. That was nice. But how fascinating is it that a character can just get cut? See you later. I also thought that was really cool. Some of the players that we had players that changed character, we had players that left, like their characters just never got the arc, and I thought it was really funny.
It was an emotionally charged experience, I think's the correct term. It was absolutely, you're completely right. It's just so volatile, because I actually do remember that session where we were all rolling the dice, or sorry, I was rolling the dice to save my life, and I was like, no, and everyone's like, oh, this is going to be the one, this is going to be like the big, comeback, and then I just died, I threw the dice, and I was like, oh, and honest to goodness, again, going back to my Chatsu Shorts episodes, but I actually do have an episode on Blimbrow the Bard, so if you want to check that out, please do. It tells you the whole summarised abridged story of him from his beginning to his humble end, as it were. Don't get me wrong, I did love the fact it was a kind of Lord of the Rings-esque end, that we all ended up happy together, we all reunited at the end for another drink and everything. And it's just, there was a nice finality to it, but the thing about it is, it's like, Blimbrow's, drinking in that tavern, it's like, I shouldn't be alive right now.
I was gonna say, without getting too sentimental, I'll try not get too sentimental if I realise we're wanting to. But I took a photo of everyone on our Polaroid camera on that last session, and that is kind of like an end of an era, that final session, because it was a month after I got married. We got everyone there, which was unusual, because usually the sessions we didn't get everyone, and it was one of my last times in that flat. And in many ways, it was kind of the last time I think we were all together in that capacity, all of us. And it was kind of, because obviously then, like I said, that was 2019, so not long after COVID hits, and it's kind of everything changes, and it's like that final session was such an incredible thing for, I think, for all of us, but like for me, it was kind of closing the door on a lot of stuff. And I'd spent 6 years writing this story for it all to come to the end. I was like, bloody hell, what am I going to do now with my time? But no, I see that the end of that is genuinely like a chapter in my life. That was my post-credit scene in Lord of the Rings, whatever, after the thing gets destroyed, whatever. That was like the little bit for me at the end, in the same way that they had it. That was kind of it, and it was amazing. Quite emotional to look back on in a way, because that was like, what a moment. And again, this was all because we played a silly little game where you roll some dice.
Oh no, absolutely. It was definitely the bookend to the end of an era, as you said. It was that precursor to what the 2020s would bring us, and I'm sure the 2020s will have some wonderful, beautiful, life-changing moments, of course. But yeah, it was, and again, this makes it makes me sound old saying this, but it was a simpler time almost. It's like, although, it was kind of the transitional period where either we were just finishing uni or we were just getting out of uni and working and, starting those formative years and everything, and then developing as, the people that we're going to become. The fact is that we were still developing, we were getting closer to one another and everything, and you're completely right, that kind of ending was, just the perfect end to the 2010s. It was that perfect summary. So, no, I totally agree with you, and I don't think it is sentimental, but in all the best ways possible, because I think what makes it even more special is the fact that not many people get that moment in D&D.
Not only that, but it's entirely unique to us, that experience. And I think I mentioned it right back at the start when I was saying what drew me to Dungeons and Dragons, and it's everything's very unique. I was saying about, I threw that dragon at another dragon. I was like, wow, you can't do that in a game, and you can't do any of this in a game. And I think we had this shared experience, which is, you're talking about, you can't tell people stories from your D&D campaign because it's never as funny. And this is the same, like, it's because it's so unique to you. We shared, a lot of us, man, this is getting really deep now.
It's okay, you're amongst friends.
Just me, you, and everyone listening to this podcast.
Shh, just ignore them at the window.
You know what I mean? Like, it was something that is truly unique to us, that nobody else on the planet experienced what we did in that way. And I think that's kind of, it's kind of amazing when you think of it like that. I've never really said that out loud before, so that's kind of amazing to think about. Yeah, I don't have a finishing point. I just, wow, it's a hell of a game, and it's been a hell of a good time.
I can only copy that and say, yeah, go play D&D. What are you doing here? Listening to this? Like, go, grab some dice off of Amazon. Go, go, go. This episode's sponsored by... No, I'm only kidding. And if you want sentimental moments, no, I completely agree. It is, again, it's one of those shared experiences that you just... I know I'm kind of treading over what you were saying, but it is definitely that case of you start off thinking, oh, it's going to be a silly game about dice and monsters and creatures of the deep and everything. Oh, it's going to be this, and we're going to have wacky adventures, and not get invested in it. You know, because, I mean, we played games like, for example, I'm looking at the box in the background, but like Exploding Kittens, or, you know, like card games, Yu-Gi-Oh!, things like that. We've played all these like board games, and we've never got, you know, emotionally attached, except for Risk. But that's another therapy session for another day. But, you know, you never really get emotionally invested. But the fact that you go in thinking, it's just another game, we're just going to pass the time, we're going to have fun, and by the end of it, you do. Because I actually remember, and this is my final point, I swear, but I always remember you actually bringing out the, like, you had 4 alternative endings, is that right?
Yep, I wrote them all. I pre-wrote 4 endings for the game.
And we got the good ending. The other endings were like horrific. Yes, the big bad takes over, he destroys everything you love. I'm like, oh man. What, even my bar? Especially the bar. Yeah, it was a wonderful ending, a wonderful campaign as well. And I mean, even though you and I have both played D&D since, I mean, it's never, and again, I'm not trying to say this with nostalgia glasses, but it's never going to live up to that.
It was very special because it was the first one for us as well, and we actually finished it, which I think is very rare for like to actually finish a kind of D&D campaign.
Because I mean, even when I tried to do one, I think we got probably 3 or 4 sessions in, like a couple of sessions, and then obviously because of COVID we had to can it, and then because I took up streaming and podcasting, I just like had to leave it to the side. And yeah, I think a lot of people tried doing it online and everything, and you know, obviously it's going to work for some people, not for others. But you're completely right, the fact that it ended on 2019, can you imagine if you said yeah, the finale 2020, why not, let's do it in 2020? Yeah, that would have it would have been the same. But the fact that not only did we have that amazing experience, but the fact that that was the very first topic that you and I talked about for this podcast in particular, you know, it really says a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
As we finish up, thank you, Craig, for not only introducing me to D&D and the wider audience listening at home, of course, but yeah, for kicking off Chatsunami and allowing us to share our experiences.
Thank you back. Thank you for letting me start Chatsunami with you. All those taking that risk all that time ago, and thanks for taking the risk to come play Dungeons & Dragons with me, because the butterfly effect of falling dominoes, me being on this podcast and you playing D&D are probably intricately linked. Who knows? But no, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you everyone so much for listening to this episode. As always, if you want to listen to more of our episodes, you can listen to us on all good podcast apps. You can also check us out on podpage.com/Chatsunami. And once again, a huge shout out to our patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster and Sonia. Thank you so much. If you want to check out our exclusive content on Patreon, you can check it out at patreon.com/Chatsunami. But until then, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. As always, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, play Dungeons & Dragons with Craig. Please, he's lonely.
I thought you were going to say roll a critical hit, but that
or
works
something.
too.
Yeah, probably. Is that what the cool kids say? This episode is sponsored by Zencastr. If you're a podcaster that records remotely like me, then you'll know how challenging it can be to create the podcast you've always wanted. That's where Zencastr comes in. Before I met Zencastr, I was but a naive podcaster, recording on low quality, one-track audio waves. But with Zencastr, you can kiss those fears goodbye as they provide crystal clear audio and HD video. Plus, with our all-in-one podcasting suite, recording with guests is extremely simple. From local recordings to post-production, Zencastr has it all. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code Chatsunami. You'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experience I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.